What is a fairy? What do we class as a fairy?
If I am
Short answer.
So, I know that the word fairy conjures up different images in the mind of different people depending on their background, culture, affinity for one type of source material versus another. So when I talk about fairies in general, and I want to give like a description, like this sweeping broad term, I would say an otherworldly being inhabiting the dimension that is contingent to our consensus reality. These two dimensions oftentimes bleed into one another, and we have lots of accounts of humans ending up in fairies and lots of accounts of fairies slipping into the human world and having interactions of various degrees with humans. Generally speaking, by fairy, still as an umbrella term, I understand humanoid-looking beings, various sizes, tall, short. I will not go as far as denying, if you saw something insect light and you believe it was a fairy, that's not a fairy, because we have actual accounts from people who saw fairy more like small size beings. But my lean is into older folklore, and it's not just lean into older folklore, it's also my own lived experience interacting with beings that can be like 7 foot tall down to about a foot. When I say fairy, again, think of it please as an umbrella term that shelters a broad variety of beings. Same as if I say humans. Okay, humans from where? Because humans from Africa look different. They're still humans, but they look different from humans of Europe, and they look different from humans in different parts of Asia. So we're all at a common denominator as humans, but we're gorgeously beautiful in our own diversity, shaped by the geography and shaped by the culture where we come from. So with the fairies, I tend to see it a little bit in the same way. The diminutive ones side by side with the taller ones. And this depends a lot on what is the area of concern of the fairy practitioner or the person who seeks to interact with them. Because you can be quite specific about who you can invite in your life and in your proximity. And this goes the other way. You also have to be aware who naturally inhabits your environment and interact respectfully with both who you want to bring in and with who is already there. Because yes, they're all fairies, but they're different kind of fairies.
That's how I understood it. So I'm glad I'm on the right track.
Are we?
I don't work with the world of fairies, so I do find it all fascinating. But yes, that explanation is how I understood it. So I'm glad that I've understood it correctly. Now, you did mention earlier the connection between Irish and Romanian. That's your Where Fairies Meet book, isn't it? That's the subject of that book. What prompted not only writing of the book, but actually making that connection?
The story goes way back. So I'll try to give it in its short version, unless you want to write another book now side by side in audio format.
You go for it.
No. So when I start to approach Romanian fairy lore with a more scholarly mindset, because up to a certain point in my life, I was very much into the experiential, go talk to your neighbor, or, when you travel to this location in the countryside, go talk to the medicine woman over there. So it was very much, or just go talk to grandma, the simplest, shortest road to fairy knowledge. So at some point in my life, I became interested into the more scholarly approach to fairy, working with fairies. And I started with Romanian. And inevitably, I came across Irish fairy lore. Now, coincidence, by then, I was also quite immersed into Irish paganism. My paganism at that point in time, talking, 10 years back or something like that, was very much Irish focused. So starting to read about the Irish fairy lore, and I'm having this moment, like being awestruck how how strong the parallels are. And now, bear in mind, Romania is all the way to the eastern side of Europe, one step more and you get into Asia. And Ireland is diametrically opposed in terms of geography. And yes, I understand
we're
certainly not neighbors. And now I understand migration happening, sweeping through Europe, Bronze Age, late Bronze Age, early Iron Age. But what really hit me wasn't the lore and the seeds that obviously hint at things that happen and stories being told hundreds of years ago. What hit me is how fairy occurrences are described in both Irish folklore and Romanian folklore today. So these are things that like late 19th century, early 20th century, and still today what happens, those who interact with fairies tell the same stories. So this is not just lore that move from one side to the other with people migrating across Europe. This happens today. So there is a parallelism that, yes, it is rooted in ages back, but it continues. So it's not that we have a body of lore that at some point in time was similar. No, we have a body of lore that was similar, but the parallels are very strong into today. So since I am one who works with fairies, I became, and my focus back then was Irish. I was like, I am very much intrigued to learn more. And here is where the Numinos comes in. I was planning, so went to Ireland more than once. I had the chance. And usually when when you go to Ireland, they don't just jump forward, start telling you fairy stories. It's because there is a respect in the living culture. There is a respect. This is not something that you talk lightly about. These are powerful beings to be reckoned with. They have an influence on people's lives, on your luck, on your everything your life depends upon. They have a say into it. So I was amazed how I would just come across people who would open up the conversation spontaneously and share with me. I was close to Lukur, I was close to Knock Anya, and people, Anya, Ferry Hill, and I encountered people who start telling me the stories, and let's go about have you been up the hill? No, I haven't. Oh, come with us, we're going up the hill, and telling me everything. And were some things that I read about, but to hear them told by people in the living culture, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm talking about this. It was like very, very special. Part one. Part two, I'm coming back, and I had never presented to a conference before. And some years ago, we had this Mystic South conference in Atlanta. And I'm like, I'm going to present to Mystic South. And I'm going to write this paper, parallels between Irish and Romanian fairy lore. And it started as a conference paper. 24 hours before the deadline, I had a fairy-related occurrence. And I was told, you are not going to present this. And I'm like, you are joking, right? Because I have less than 24 hours before the submission deadline. And they were like, you don't worry about that. This is going to be a book, the parallels. You have to make it a book and dive deeper into it. And I'm like, and what about the conference? And the answer was, oh, never mind. Tomorrow morning, you'll know what to write about. Woke up in the morning, sat on in front of the computer, and
please tell me you did.
And in that moment, the whole abstract for what I was supposed to present comes into my mind. I'm typing it quickly, hit send without even rereading what I wrote, and then start questioning what the heck was in my mind, because at that point, I had no resume, nothing, no CV to propose me to be accepted in such a big of an event as Mystic South is. I'm like, okay, here I am, a nobody. I just blurted out something about fairies, and now I expect, sure enough, a few days later, I was invited to present. So, and this is how it began. Like me putting more out there in the capacity as a teacher, as I said, and a guide. This is my experience. Anybody who would like to, share their experience so I can make our joint journey more interesting and more useful, more productive. So, and this is how the book came about. I started writing it, and I think it took me, 8 weeks to write it. So writing it, it wasn't the research that went into it, because it wasn't just telling about my things. It was also backing up my claims with examples and, with the work of other people that have been scholarly involved with fairies for ages. So this is how the first book came about.